Melbourne. First, though, on the program on AM Agenda this morning, I'm joined by Liberal MP Kelly O'Dwyer and the Shadow Parliamentary Secretary for Health, Nick Champion. Nick, can you start by telling us what Labor wants here in terms of helping to fight this rapidly escalating crisis?
Well, look, it is rapidly escalating. There are predictions that there might be 1.5 million cases of Ebola in West Africa by 2015 if the world does nothing. And if we aren't part of an international effort to help combat this virus, then we will have a very serious public health problem, not just for West Africa, but for the whole world. We're now already seeing cases in Europe and cases in the US. Obviously, it's up to Australia, I think, in part with the rest of the world, to provide assistance to West Africa in the form of medical teams and specialists who want to go to try and contain this virus, and it can be contained.
Kelly, the Labor Party saying money is not enough, and in this news release they've put out this morning, they've got quotes from a number of groups and people, the UN, quoting a UN Security Council calling on countries to do more, including delivery of assistance, including qualified, specialised and trained personnel. We've got that. Why don't we provide it?
So I think Labor has been incredibly reckless and deliberately misleading in terms of what Australia's contribution has been to date. For starters, we have been asked to contribute funds, and we have done that. We have delivered more than $18 million directly to making sure that we can try and combat this Ebola outbreak in West Africa and stop its advance into other countries. We have also, though, contributed more than $40 million to the World Health Organisation, which is doing good work. There is nothing prohibiting volunteers from going over to be part of not-for-profit organisations who are doing good work overseas. But what we will not do as a country is we will not recklessly send Australians into harm's way, where we have a duty of care to make sure that if they contract Ebola, that they are evacuated and they are treated. We have no guarantees as of today in any country that they would be able to be evacuated or treated there, whether in the US or whether in Europe. It would be simply reckless for us to send people knowing this into harm's way. And I have a question for the Foreign Minister, the Opposition Foreign Minister and Deputy Leader of the Labor Party, and also for Nick. I mean, which hospital would they like them to be treated in Australia? I'd like them to name the hospitals that they would like us to be treating people in this country if they think that this is such a simple issue to deal with.
Nick Champion, your response to that? Because I guess this is something the Foreign Minister herself has pointed to, the lack of capacity to evacuate, to airlift our personnel if they are deployed to the affected countries in West Africa.
Arrangements for evacuation, agreements for evacuation are made with international partners all the time. That's what happens when we're part of international arrangements. And
but we don't have agreements.
That's what governments do. They set out agreements, and so you're saying to us on one hand that it's okay for Australians to go serve as part of not-for-profit organisations where they might then return to Australia, as we have seen, and then have to attend local health clinics where there is an issue, as opposed to the government making sensible arrangements with international partners for evacuation, which would be far safer for the Australian public than this sort of higgledy-piggledy arrangement that you're proposing, Kelly. And the second thing is, in regards to which hospitals, well, the Health Minister was out there last week talking about the arrangements that have been put in place with hospitals around the country in case we do have cases of Ebola in the country from people arriving here by plane. So, I'm just a bit perplexed by your approach. It seems to be, illogical, to be honest with you.
Well, no. Well, let me explain it.
Kelly, I'll get you to respond, but I want to ask you, Kelly, as well, that if Labor is being reckless and irresponsible, do you think the AMA is as well? Because the AMA says the government should be doing more.
I'm not going to make a comment on the AMA. The reason I can say that the ALP are being reckless is because I know that they have received high-level briefings both from the Health Department and also, I understand, the Defence Department as well. They have access to the same information that the government has access to. They know that there is no evacuation or treatment plan or agreement in place in any country, and they know that to deliberately send in Australian personnel, to send them in, basically because they have been told to go in, would be quite reckless and irresponsible in terms of our duty of care to those personnel. Now, if people choose to volunteer, and there are some incredible people out there who choose to volunteer and to go into harm's way, that is a very different question. And of course we have all the appropriate protections in place for the screening of those people returning to Australia. But what the Labor Party is asking us to do is to deliberately send people into harm's way, and we can't guarantee their safety.
All right, let's move on. I want to ask Nick about Labor's apparent concerns on biometric data capacity of the Immigration Department. This is related to the next phase of national security laws, the so-called Foreign Fighters Bill. Nick, can you talk us through what Labor's worried about here?
Well, clearly, whenever we're talking about national security legislation, we've got to get the balance right between overall security on one hand and individual liberty on the other. And what we're, I suppose, looking forward to, I mean, this has been something that's new, that's been, part of, exposed as, part of the consideration of this bill. And I guess what we're looking forward to is the Security Committee looking at these aspects and making some recommendations on them. Clearly, it's about getting the balance right. We've tried to, I guess, get the balance right in terms of our negotiations and support of the government in some instances with the previous bills. But obviously we want to make sure that people's civil liberties are protected while we're protecting the overall security of the country.
Kelly, do you have any concerns on this, the biometric issue, the fact that tens or hundreds of thousands of Australians on their way in and out of Australia, completely innocent, potentially will have their photographs, their fingerprints and so on kept on file by the Immigration Department under this legislation?
Well, I couldn't quite work out from what Nick said as to whether or not he agreed or disagreed with it, which I suppose is the perfect Labor Party position in all things. But the point that we make as a government is that we have a responsibility to protect Australian citizens. We have a responsibility to do all that we can do to make sure that if there is a preventable terrorist act, potentially on home soil, that we do what we can to prevent it. Now, sometimes that will mean that we need to properly identify people, and in so doing, we will need to obtain that data that you have just mentioned. So we agree that it's important to have appropriate protections for civil liberties, but it's also important for us to protect Australian citizens. And we think the balance is right, which is why that we have brought forward this bill.
And I guess it is going to a parliamentary committee, Nick Champion, so that providing that scrutiny, that in your view provided the scrutiny needed in the first tranche of this legislation, you're confident this will achieve the same this time around? Obviously the starting point from Labor has been from the outset here to cooperate on all of these things, hasn't it?
Well, look, I think when you're collecting iris scans and potentially fingerprints and the like from people, then obviously the devil will be in the detail of not just the collection of that data, but the storage of it, the protocols that surround it, and the protection of people's civil liberties. So, it's easy for Kelly to sort of sling insults through the TV camera, but we want to be careful and cautious about people's civil liberties, and we don't want to give up freedom in order to protect it.
Kelly, any response given? I mean, obviously this is a key tenet of the Liberal Party as well, isn't it? Personal freedom.
Of course it is. And I think probably we've done a lot more than the Labor Party to protect personal freedoms. And Nick, if you feel remotely offended by anything that I've said, I never like hurting your feelings.
No, indeed.
Well, on that note, on that very nice note, let's take a break. Back in just a moment. Stay with us.
I knew real life insurance was right for me after the first call. I'm now confident that if something happens to me, my family's financial future is protected.
You can apply for real family life cover quickly and easily over the phone without a medical or blood test. Good afternoon. Real Insurance, Laurel speaking. How can I help you?
Hi Laurel, my name's Julian. I'm calling to get a quick quote for life insurance.
With Real Family Life Cover, you can choose the cash benefit your family will receive, up to $1 million if you were to pass away.
Great. I've used your online life insurance calculator and I think $300,000 would work for my family.
Perfect. I just need your age and smoking status.
I'm 36 and I'm a non-smoker.
For a $300,000 benefit, your premium would be just $7.39 a week.
That's less than I thought.
Plus, just for choosing Real Insurance, after the first 12 months, we'll give you back 10% of the premiums you've paid in that time.
I like the sound of that.
At Real, we're proud of our award-winning customer service. So call us now on 1300 303 459 or search Real Life Insurance.
At AGL, we create energy solutions for every part of every day. Like the day you choose to pay your bills by the month. With My AGL monthly bill, you get smaller bills that are easier to manage in your monthly budget.
This spring, Luxbet has an offer that's set to impress. Join now and we'll match your first deposit with a bonus bet of up to $500. Get ready for the big spring races. Join Luxbet on your mobile today.
Luxbet.com.
Don't wait! Summer starts now at Barbecues Galore. 4-burner barbies less than half price, $3.49. Timber settings half price, $3.99. Pizza ovens, $2.49, save $1.50. And we won't be beaten on Weber prices. Hurry! Summer starts now at Barbecues Galore.
Your best chance to get a boat this summer. The Gold Coast International Marine Expo. 600 boats for sale. 3 kilometres of displays. Tickets at the gate. Free on-site parking. The Gold Coast International Marine Expo. This Friday, Saturday and Sunday. Coomera.
I knew real life insurance was right for me after the first call. I'm now confident that if something happens to me, my family's financial future is protected.
You can apply for Real Family Life Cover quickly and easily over the phone without a medical or blood test. Good afternoon. Real Insurance, Laurel speaking. How can I help you?
Hi Laurel, my name's Julian. I'm calling to get a quick quote for life insurance.
With Real Family Life Cover, you can choose the cash benefit your family will receive, up to $1 million if you were to pass away.
Great. I've used your online life insurance calculator and I think $300,000 would work for my family.
Perfect. I just need your age and smoking status.
I'm 36 and I'm a non-smoker.
For a $300,000 benefit, your premium would be just $7.39 a week.
That's less than I thought.
Plus, just for choosing Real Insurance, after the first 12 months, we'll give you back 10% of the premiums you've paid in that time.
I like the sound of that.
At Real, we're proud of our award-winning customer service. So call us now on 1300 303 459 or search Real Life Insurance.
This is AM Agenda. Thanks for your company. With me, Labor frontbencher Nick Champion and Liberal MP Kelly O'Dwyer. Kelly, the Prime Minister's comments on shirt-fronting Putin, they continue to reverberate, certainly in Russia. The Russian Prime Minister Medvedev has said that politicians should be choosing their words carefully. He's said that Mr Putin is quite adept at sports and they could have forceful debates, but then with that swipe suggesting that serious politicians should be choosing their words more carefully. It's clearly got a reaction right from the top there.
Well, look, a serious government also should respond to the very natural concerns that Australia has raised. 38 lives were lost. We know very clearly that the Russians have got very direct influence with Russian-backed rebels in the Ukraine who downed this plane, which saw the loss of those 38 Australian lives. We are very concerned that there has not been full cooperation in the investigation, and we want to see that full cooperation.
Well, Nick Champion, that's fair enough, isn't it? And Bill Shorten has been urging the government to go tough on Putin. In fact, he said himself he didn't want Putin to be here in the first place.
Well, look, I think it's one thing to indicate that you don't want someone to visit the shores of Australia who's obviously, got some responsibility, I think, in the way that Russian-backed rebels have been allowed to behave in the eastern part of Ukraine. But what we've seen, I guess, from the Prime Minister, frankly, is a bit of loose language, and that's allowed the Russians now to trivialise what is a very, very serious matter, in international law. And I guess, you can tell by Kelly's response, the fact that she didn't talk and talk and talk and talk, she was reasonably short with her answer, that she understands the importance of, serious and sober messaging on these matters. So, we don't want to see them trivialised. We certainly don't want to see sandpit diplomacy where sort of people throw sand at each other. What we want to see is this matter seriously dealt with at an international level, and we want to see Mr. Putin, really pursue this matter in his own country to bring those people who are responsible to justice. And that's that's what we should be saying to the Russians. That's the pressure we should be applying to the Russians, rather than this loose language that I think we've seen in the last week or so.
And I guess this row, spat with Russia, becomes the dominant theme of the G20 Leaders Week in less than a month now in Brisbane, Kelly, which I guess in many respects, when the Treasurer wants to focus on growth and so on, that this, if Putin does show up, is going to be clearly going to dominate all the coverage, certainly here.
Well, I don't accept that. I mean, I think the Treasurer's been doing a fantastic job leading the G20. There are going to be some marvellous outcomes as a result of all of the hard work and discussions that have taken place to date in terms of how we can increase global growth. Australia has played a very, very key role in all of that, particularly in relation to how we can invest more in the infrastructure that is going to be required, not only in Australia but right across the world, and what role that will play in global growth. I think that people won't be distracted by this issue. I think people will focus on the key issues and what the G20 is all about. And I think also people will focus on the fact that having the Russian Prime Minister in Australia will be an opportunity for us to put our case very strongly that we expect and require the Russian government to fully cooperate with the investigation into the downing of the plane that lost 38 lives.
Indeed. Well, we've just got some breaking news there. I want to repeat, it's on the screen. Dubbo MP Troy Grant elected as Deputy New South Wales Premier. That's in a Nationals Party meeting this morning. Adrian Piccoli remains Deputy. So that news just out of State Parliament in Sydney this morning. Finally, on to one last issue, Nick Champion, I want to touch on, and this is a significant development yesterday in the federal court, this ruling that a baby born to asylum seekers at the Mater Hospital in Brisbane, the baby will be treated as an unauthorised maritime arrival. What's Labor's view on this ruling? Would you seek to have legislation passed to maybe, I guess, to circumvent the ruling? What's Labor's position on it?
Well, no, we respect the decision of the federal court. That's why you have courts, to make decisions or interpretations of legislation, and we're quite comfortable with the court's decision. We respect the court's decision.
Is this about, Kelly O'Dwyer, preventing what they call in the United States anchor babies, where someone, many people give birth to children in the United States, they automatically become US citizens, and therefore the chances of the parents having access to citizenship also are enhanced? Well,
that's a good point, and the truth is you don't want people making dangerous boat journeys who are pregnant, paying people smugglers in the hope that this will somehow secure them the right to live in Australia. I mean, that is completely circumventing our laws in this country in order to try and do that. So the federal court ruling is a very sensible ruling. I note that Nick was very brief in his response. The Labor Party, frankly, is all over the shop on this particular issue. We know that they'd like to go back to their previous policy, which really opened the borders for everybody.
Oh, come on, Kelly! Don't roll out the spin. Don't roll out the spin.
It's not
We're close
spin.
to the
It's
close
not
of the
spin.
program. We're close to the end of the program. One of the last actions of the Rudd government was to basically put in place the Papua New Guinean arrangements,
after it had completely dismantled temporary protection visas, which you're still fighting. Which you guys are still fighting at the moment.
The actions of the previous government in stemming the flow of boats to Australia.
Well, you opened up the doors.
You must agree, Nick,
you let more than 50,000 people came.
Well, that's true, but Nick Champion, if this is not an issue, if this is neutralised, that's obviously what Labor is hoping for, isn't it? And essentially in lockstep with the government on most things here.
Well, they're not, because they don't support temporary protection visas.
Kelly, that was a question to me. I mean, look, what I'd say to you is we don't want people to take dangerous boat journeys in order to seek asylum. What we want is an orderly migration program which has, as a component of it, an increased refugee intake to make sure that people can, have some humanitarian portion of our migration program, and that's an important thing for Australia. It's what we did after World War II. It's what we did after the Vietnam War. It's what we should do now, but it has to be orderly and it has to be safe.
Numbers suggesting that, and they're welcome numbers, of course, that the number of people, asylum seekers, dying at sea have reduced dramatically in recent years. Of course, that's welcomed by everyone. The Minister responsible, Scott Morrison, there's been a lot of talk about him moving on into bigger and I guess more challenging, although this is a pretty challenging portfolio, but a broader portfolio areas like defence is something he's been talked about. Is there any feeling in the coalition as to when this reshuffle is going to happen? Certainly there's an expectation it will happen by the end of the year.
Is this a question to me?
It is, Kelly, yeah.
Right. So I didn't hear who you'd address that to, Keiran. Look, obviously, I don't
think Nick would have much of a clue, as much as I do like Nick a lot.
He'd have just as much of a clue as me in terms of speculating on this, because obviously it's a matter for the Prime Minister to determine what team he has around him and who is best placed to do what job. But it is very clear that Scott Morrison has done an excellent job in this area, a very challenging area. The boats have stopped, and it's due to the very good policy work that he has done as Minister.
The Prime Minister could
Kelly,
put Kelly in Cabinet.
Yeah, well, that's a chance, maybe an outside chance. Get on. I was going to mention a tab agency, but I won't do it because we don't want to give free advertising. But anyway, I think Kelly might be a good outside chance as well, certainly for the ministry. Not an outside chance at all. I think a red hot favourite. But anyway, we'll leave it there. Kelly Dwyer and Nick Champion, have a good